In today's session, I'm going to be drawing a master study of this painting by Ilya Repin. It's a portrait of writer Vsevolod Mikhailovich Garshin, done in 1884. There's something about this portrait that I find really compelling. It's the way that Vsevolod's eyes are meeting the gaze of the painter, the way he's hunched over his desk, covered in papers. This session is not really going to be focused on likeness. You'll see when you get to the end of the drawing, the likeness wasn't spot on. It's more about capturing a mood and emotion from the drawing. I also like the contrast of the very dark jacket he's wearing and his very dark hair, contrasted with the white background and the papers. So when I looked at this painting, I thought it would be a fun challenge to try and capture. There's a lot of black, a lot of very dark colours, and it's very difficult to figure out how to capture those in a way that isn't overwhelming or distracting. So stay tuned and you'll see how I managed to get on. So as you can see, I'm starting my drawing very loosely. I'm just letting my eyes flow over the painting that I'm studying from and following with my pencil line. I'm not lifting the pencil off the paper so much. This is almost like a continuous line drawing. So I'm trying not to be too precious about where the lines are going, and I'm just going on an exploration with my pencil to try and pin down the major shapes and features that I'm seeing. So at this stage I thought the drawing was good enough, so I went ahead with my smudging. Normally I try to take a little bit longer to get the drawing right, but this was a very short session. I did this at about 40 minutes, so I just wanted to crack on with developing the form and getting into the detail. So I kind of started from these eyes and worked outwards. I was aware that my underdrawing was probably not super accurate, so whilst I'm building up the details, I'm really trying to look back at the original drawing and use my comparative measurements to fix any inaccuracies as I find them. I'm also looking very carefully at the painting to see if there's any visible brush strokes, the areas that are softer versus the areas that have more texture. And just kind of replicating that with the marks I use with my pencil. I find that paintings are actually incredibly helpful to do master studies of, because you're still engaging that part of your brain that is observing and translating. So I find it's a little bit more engaging and involves a lot more concentration doing master studies of paintings versus master studies of drawings. But it's good to have a combination, right? So you can probably see my likeness isn't great. I got the left hand side of the face as you look at it, so his right hand side of his face a little bit small, but it's nothing you can't fix. So I think sometimes it's fun not to get too hung up on likeness and just enjoy the process of creating a cool drawing, which is kind of what I was doing here. I didn't even bother bringing in my overlay app, which I normally did just to check in on proportion. It's all about just doing a quick fun drawing, really. So I think the biggest gripe I had with myself when I was doing this drawing is I made him look a lot older. So I think I've added about 10 or 20 years to this guy. I think that's a bit of a challenge. It happens quite a lot when you're drawing young, like kids or old people, as you can exaggerate things without realizing it that really throw people's age off. And I find that even more annoying than getting the likeness not quite right. I did kind of fix it later on a little bit, but sometimes it's really hard to tell what it is about your drawing that's made the person look older without actually doing something like an overlay. So yeah, it's a tough one, really. So with the hair and his jacket, it's a very flat dark colour in the photo reference that I had. So I really made an effort to make the shading that I did quite flat and uniform. I really didn't want the jacket, the darkness of the jacket and the hair to take away from the face. And I thought having a very flat grey texture might give a good contrast to some of the very sharp and dark lines that I've got going on around his features. So that was a general idea, but yeah, so it's kind of experimenting really, just sort of seeing, trying different things and seeing what works. So you can see, although I did build up quite even grey tone, I've also added in some hatching. Now hatching that's very straight up and down, left and right or diagonal can be quite neutral, so if it's not going in a specific direction, it's quite uniform and very flat. It actually doesn't distract the eye from the main features, I find. So some kind of sideways hatching or up and down hatching I really like to introduce. And actually Sargent did quite a lot of diagonal hatching in a lot of his drawings when he just wanted to bring in some washes of colour without it being too smooth. So yeah, I mean hatching is definitely a fun thing to play with if you're going to do pencil drawings. I often see exercises where you like have a box and you just fill it up with hatching marks. I must admit I find those exercises really boring. I would rather just do a quick drawing and introduce different sketch and hatching marks to that drawing in order to figure out and experiment with what works personally. So it's probably a little bit slower than doing dedicated exercises, but I find it a lot more fun. I think that the biggest problem with drawing and sketching when you have a busy life is you don't want it to be a drag, you want it to be fun and interesting. If you're having to drag yourself to your sketchbook to do a really tedious exercise, then there's a real risk that you're going to find an excuse to do something else. So I think for me that what's really encouraged me to keep coming back is to find a way to keep my exercises and my art practice fun and engaging, even if it means that maybe I'm not taking the most direct and efficient route to where I need to go. It's much better to go on a slow road that you're not going to stop travelling along, rather than to take the quickest, most boring road that you're just going to sort of wander off and do something else, I think. So that's pretty much it. I've come to the end of my drawing for now. I must admit I did go back and fix a few bits around his eye later on in the day when I came back with fresh eyes, but I mean I was pretty happy with the way this turned out. It's got a really cool effect. I hope you enjoyed this drawing today. I hope it inspires you to pick up a pencil and do a drawing yourself, maybe even this drawing here by Ilya Repin. Have a great day everyone, and I'll see you soon.